Raw celebrated its first year on the air with a special anniversary broadcast on January 10th to see the show, which was headlined by a tag titles match of Kid and Jannetty winning the belts over the Quebecers in an 18-minute match, along with Randy Savage returning for commentary on the night for the first time in months to set up his match with IRS for the following week, drawing a record audience with a 3.4 rating. With the next Monday not only maintaining the momentum but setting the bar higher with Randy Savage vs IRS, along with the final build-up to the Royal Rumble pay-per-view with Yoko vs Taker for the title and the Rumble match, leading Raw to a big 3.6 rating with over 3.2 million viewers in its most-watched show to date, with numbers remaining strong for the rest of the month with 3.5 and 3.3 ratings to make it the highest-rated month in Raw's one-year history. First with the follow-up of the Rumble, which also saw Jim Ross making his Raw debut on commentary with McMahon, who mentioned the record Raw audience of the previous week on the air on January 24th, saying that last Monday's Raw was the highest-rated show on cable television, and the co-winners of the Rumble match in Bret Hart and Lex Luger setting up the WrestleMania main event in a heavily hyped coin toss segment on January 31st. After the strong January, Raw went back to more routine numbers for the first two shows in February, with its momentum halted by the traditional dog show preemption in the middle, with the big rebound back to record levels coming on February 28th for a show headlined by a big main event of Randy Savage vs Yokozuna going 14 minutes for the WWF title, with a post-match angle of Bret and Luger coming out to continue the build to WrestleMania X. With Savage after headlining the most-watched Raw ever in his last match on January 17th, spiking Raw again almost a full rating point over the monthly average to bump Raw to a 3.4 rating, with a massive figure at record levels of over 2.2 million homes tuning in on the night to make Savage's last two TV matches the two most-watched Raw broadcasts in show history. As the WWF was preparing for the first ever WrestleMania event without Hulk Hogan in a headline match, the company was setting up the top matches on the card throughout the month, including the triangle headliner of Yoko, Luger and Bret, with Savage vs Crush, Owen vs Bret and Razor vs Michaels in the first ever ladder match for the IC title as the most promoted matches for the pay-per-view, with the day after the show on March 21st not seeing a special spike to draw a routine 2.8 rating, with the following week instead seeing a big bump jumping to a 3.3 rating for a show headlined by Lex Luger vs Rick Martel as the top match of the night. Unlike last year when the show took a hit going head-to-head with the NCAA Finals, Raw on April 4th, facing strong competition, held steady to draw strong 3.3 ratings for the next 2 weeks, featuring, in addition to Razor and Yoko, working singles matches in the 10-man tag match originally booked on the WrestleMania card that was cut from the show during the pay-per-view. 3 hyped promo segments, first with Curt Hennig making his return for an interview with Monsoon, followed by the debut segment of Shawn Michaels' Heartbreak Hotel and Lex Luger as a guest on Lawler's King Court. And with Raw trending upwards since the start of the year, April 18th saw the show breaking new grounds to draw its biggest audience to date with a 3.7 rating and a record of over 2.3 million homes, making it not only the most-watched Raw but the most-watched wrestling TV show in general in over 2 years, seeing Raw overall breaking the January record with its highest-rated and most-watched month to date in April 1994. Raw had an unusual viewing pattern in mid-May, as with the May 9th show seeing Raw dropping to a 94 low 2.5 rating while setting up the main event for the following week, seeing Yoko, Fuji and Cornette challenging Earthquake to a sumo match in a segment on Lawler's King's Court, resulting in a show on May 16th headlined by the Yokozuna vs Earthquake sumo match, bumping Raw a full rating point from a year-low 2.5 to a near-record 3.5 rating within a week, with the rest of the month seeing Raw continuing in the 3 rating range, with the next 2 weeks seeing 2 King of the Ring qualifier matches with Owen vs Doink followed by Tatanka vs Crush, along with 2 hyped King's Court segments, first with Luger and Crush followed by Bret Michaels and Diesel in the big segment on May 30th doing a 3.1 rating. with the big talk of the industry being the official signing of Hulk Hogan in WCW and his TV debut on Saturday, June 11. The WWF, responding to the news and the potential spike to WCW business, started to heavily push the new generation branding campaign with commercials presenting all its current top guys as the top wrestlers in the business, while Hogan among others presented as the past in black and white colors, starting the month with another 3.1 rating, with Lawler's King Court continuing to be one of the featured segments on the show, with Lawler building up to Roddy Piper's in-ring return as a counter to Piper's Pit, along with the top match of the night that saw Tatanka vs. Crush going 20 minutes in a lumberjack match, with Razor vs. the debuting jobber Jeff Hardy closing the show, with Raw drawing its biggest number of the month on June 27 with a 3.3 rating for a show featuring a Luger match closing the show, and Bigelow vs. Mabel as the promoted match of the night, along with Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart as guests of the now almost weekly King's Court. One of the most historically significant months in WWF history took place in July 1994, with the Vince McMahon trial taking place throughout the month, with crucial repercussions for the future of the company, as Vince, who in addition to being in the middle of the trial was off television after undergoing neck surgery, got the verdict of him being officially not guilty on July 23 in one of the most important moments in Vince's personal and professional life, with Raw 2 days later driven by the triangle storyline of Luger, Tatanka and DiBiase, continuing with the good news for McMahon, as the show, which jumped to a month-high 3.4 rating with over 2.1 million homes and over 3.1 million total viewers, ended up the first ever Raw broadcast to finish as the #1 highest-rated show on cable television for the week, with Raw, which saw its average for the month overall dropping due to the first show coming on a holiday weekend on July 4, seeing perhaps its most memorable match of the month taking place a week later on July 11, as after winning a title shot a few weeks back to set up the match, Bret Hart vs. 1-2-3 Kid Sean Waltman headlined Raw to go 25 minutes for the WWF title, and one of the most talked about matches on Raw to date. One of the most newsworthy Raws in show history took place on August 1, with the Loaded Show, which drew a month-high 3.3 rating, featuring the TV return of Vince McMahon to commentary for the first time in almost 2 months, with him now able to shift his full focus back to the WWF product, with the weight of the trial of the past 3 years officially lifted off his shoulders, with one of the most talked about aspects of the show seeing Randy Savage taking constant shots at the US government throughout the night, celebrating the victory while sitting next to McMahon, with the top match of the night one of the most hyped matches of the year, with a WrestleMania X rematch of Razor Ramon vs. Shawn Michaels, with them going over 23 minutes, and Michaels' first match back since the all-time memorable ladder match at the WrestleMania pay-per-view, and with the WWF and WCW World Champions in Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan exchanging shots and media interviews since Hogan's signing with WCW in the past 2 months, including Bret saying that Hogan is a dinosaur, with Hogan responding that he drew double Bret's numbers. August 24 took the company's rivalry to the next level with a number that put everybody on notice, as with the first ever televised Hogan vs. Flair match given away on the Clash TV special. The match, ironically, as Hogan said days earlier, ended up more than doubling Raw's usual audience to draw a huge 6.7 rating, peaking with an over 7 rating and over 4.1 million homes in the most watched match ever on cable television, giving WCW massive momentum just as Raw is about to take its usual hit with a 2-week preemption on the USA Network. With one of the headline matches for the SummerSlam pay-per-view seeing Undertaker vs. a Taker imposter in his first program since January, the real Taker, who was off television since January with several injuries, finally made his Raw TV return, with the company giving away his first match back on Raw's first show after 2 weeks out of its regular time slot on September 12, trying to offset the expected damage caused by breaking the viewing habit, with the show driven by the Taker return match seeing Raw starting back with almost its full August viewership doing a 2.8 rating in the most watched show of the month, with September ending as it was in its debut year due to the USA circumstances and heavier sports competition starting in the fall season, Raw's lowest-rated month of the year. Raw took a backseat on October 24th with the most hyped WWF TV program of the week coming a day earlier with the debut of Action Zone headlined by Bret vs. Owen for the title in their promoted final match ever, doing a strong 2 rating and a big increase over the former All-American's recent average, with Raw a day later headlined by Razor vs. Yoko doing a 2.5. as Raw's biggest number of the month, which was also its biggest viewership in almost 3 months, coming on October 31st, headlined by Lex Luger vs. Bob Backlund to continue the build-up to the Survivor Series pay-per-view. One of the biggest shocks in WWF history opened November 1994. With Randy Savage as the company's biggest name and locker room leader abruptly leaving the WWF, with him expected to sign with WCW shortly after, with Savage as opposed to Vince's direction for him as the lead WWF brand ambassador feeling that he has more years as a full-time top-drawing wrestler, with any indication in the recent past showing that to be true, with Savage routinely spiking Raw numbers including the 2 biggest audiences in Raw history earlier in the year, with Vince in a rare situation perhaps never seen before in company history addressing the story of Savage deciding to leave after not reaching an agreement on a new deal on air on the November 7th Raw, while putting over Savage big to thank him for his contributions to the company from Vince as his #1 fan, in a major personal and professional blow to McMahon, who is about to see the top 2 names of his biggest ever boom period now competing against him on WCW's side in a surreal situation, with the rest of the month ranging from a 2.7 to 2.8 rating, seeing Bob Backlund and his new heel character building up to another title match against Bret Hart, setting up a 2-day title reign with Diesel winning the belt in a Madison Square Garden house show 2 days later, with the first Raw of Diesel's title run, with Nash now built as the new leader of the New Generation era doing another 2.8 rating. 2 days after Randy Savage made his WCW debut on Saturday, December 3rd, Raw, perhaps with the curiosity of the Savage follow-up with how the company would respond on Monday, jumped big to its highest-rated show in over 4 months with a 3.3 rating and over 2.9 million viewers, seeing in addition to Davey Boy Smith vs. Jeff Jarrett as the top-promoted match, Shawn Michaels as a guest on Lawler's King's Court as the top segment of the show, along with him doing commentary with McMahon on the night for the entire hour, with Michaels after the experiment on December 5th ending up doing commentary for the rest of the month, with McMahon still trying to fill the void left by Savage, with the final Raw of the year, which took a hit to a year-low 2.2 rating, coming on Christmas weekend, featuring Diesel on King's Court building up his Rumble pay-per-view title match against Bret Hart, along with a rare TV Undertaker match against the Brooklyn Brawler to close 1994.